Hello everybody, Luis here, and let's talk C#. Today, we'll talk about switch statements. And if you already know if statements, what they are and what they do, this video will be so easy for you because essentially switch statements are, I think you can say that it's a different version of an if statement. So conceptually, they both do the same thing. So let's dive into the code and see what they look like. So here's the syntax. So a switch statement starts with a switch, much like the if statement. So you can see that it turns pink. It has your curly braces there. Oh, not curly braces, sorry, your round brackets, which is fine, which is good. Your if statements have that as well. Okay, so we're gonna have our curly braces. Yeah, that's good. Switch statements have that as well, but we're gonna have something else in here. Okay, the inside is actually a little different, and the condition as well. So it's not really a condition that goes in here. So let's say that I have a variable, and I'm just gonna call this variable number, and this will be equal to 5. Okay, so in here, this is where it kind of starts to become a little different than if statements. As I said, because there's not a condition in these brackets, okay? This is actually a variable, okay? In this case, my variable will be number. So there's no conditional expression in here or Boolean expression or anything like that, okay? So it's just a variable name. And then on the inside, what I'm gonna have is cases, okay? So, and I mean, if you listen to yourself in English, this will kind of make sense because you're switching over different values that the variable number can hold, okay? And in case this value is 1, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna use colon, and what I'm gonna do is maybe say, doesn't really matter, it's just an example. Your number is 1, okay? And what I have to throw in here as well is the keyword break. So that's a new keyword for us. This is a very useful keyword, and we are going to use it in so many different cases, especially when we're talking about loops. But in this situation specifically, and actually that applies to loops as well. So what the break keyword does is it breaks out of whatever it's inside, right? So in this case, the break keyword is inside a switch statement. So when the code execution hits the break keyword, it actually breaks out of whatever it's inside, which is the switch statement in this case, and continues with the code execution or whatever lines of code that I have, okay? So essentially that's what it does. So how many cases can I have in a switch statement? Well, as many as you need. So you can have something like case 2 and then do a console write line in here as well and say your number is 2, okay? And I cannot forget to have my break keyword in there. Okay, and I can throw in as many cases as I need. Okay, now in most situations, what's going to happen is that you're going to check for a few cases, and then you're going to have something that applies to every other situation or every other case. Much like in if statements, you have the actual if. Then you have else if you have more than one situation, and then for every other one you have just the else statement, right? That is supposed to handle everything else or every other case. This is called default, okay? So, and in the default it actually works the same way. I can do something like I did not know that number. Doesn't really matter. I have to throw in my break keyword in there as well. So what this code is doing is it's checking for, let's do a quick recap, okay? So the switch statement will check for the values inside my number variable. Okay? In case this number is 1, it's gonna run this piece of code and move on. Okay? In case this number is equal to 2, it's gonna run this piece of code and move on. The reason why it moves on is because I have my break keyword in here. Okay? So I'm checking for numbers 1 and 2, and for every other number, okay, that is not 1 or 2, I'm gonna run this piece of code, and after I run this, I will move on. Okay? So if I run this code, I do not know that number, which is exactly the output that I'm looking for, because 5 is not equal to 1, 5 is not equal to 2, so it has to be everything else, right? If I change this to 1 and run, your number is 1. Cool, the code works. Okay, good. So essentially any situation that you're using an if statement can be solved with a switch statement as well. You just have to think about it a little and make the right choice, because even though they do the same thing, you have to be able to adhere to certain programming principles, like the dry principle, for example. Don't repeat yourself. So for example, if you have an if statement that has compound Boolean expressions, that is probably one situation in which you would prefer to go with an if statement, because essentially if statements are more powerful from that perspective. But if we're just talking about simple if statements, then I think it's safe to switch to a switch statement. Okay. All right, that's it for this video, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.